Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Goddess Garden Book Chat. I'm your host, 11 Goddess. Before we get further, I want to say thank you so much for choosing to be here, to watch this video, and to do these deep dives with me. I'm having such a good time with this. So I'm glad you're here, and I hope you're enjoying them too. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you think about what we've been talking about, and I want to know what you're reading. So share that as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to make sure that you don't miss anything that's coming because I have a lot of stuff coming our way. But today, I decided to go back to 1897 because I recently decided to read Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, I'm going to talk about the book first and get all that out of the way before we even touch on the cinematic universe that I was inhabiting, thinking that I knew anything about Count Dracula. Now, um, this whole audiobook experience that I had was a dramatization book. It's included in my membership with Audible, and I was able to enjoy this without having to purchase the book. And when I got it, I sort of put it to the side, like I put it in my library, but I didn't focus on it. I was too I was too busy reading trash romance and self-help and government and all kinds of other stuff, plus biographies. But as it is my nature, I get in the middle of the night and I decide, well, let's listen to something scary. And I have a couple of go-tos that were already in my library, but they're like creepy, creepy, creepy. So I decided to pull up Dracula. Guys, I've been dancing around this for a minute. Let me go ahead and check it out. It's narrated by Alan Cumming, Tim Curry, Simon Vance, my absolute favorite from the Anne Rice vampire series. That's Simon Vance. Catherine Kelgren, Susan Durden, John Lee, Graham Malcolm, and Stephen Crosley. I don't know who played what character. As a cast, it is a phenomenal listen. Aside from the story, who put this team together and the way that they resonate, because I didn't realize that most of it is like reading letters written by Mina, letters written by Lucy, communications between Jonathan Harker trying to communicate back to Lucy. It's a ride I wasn't expecting because again I got caught up in cinematic Dracula, but I can say that as reads go, you don't expect a book that's written in 1897 to be able to send chills up and down your spine. I certainly didn't expect it. So halfway through the book, I'm already feeling like I'm not going to sleep to this. There's no way this is my nighttime listen anymore. I'm not about to start freaking myself out and having weird vampire dreams. This book is creepy. Renfield is insane. I never Well, okay, let me take that back. There are a couple of movies that I've seen where Renfield is kind of tapped out, but I didn't focus on the fact that as a character, the truest form of Renfield, crazy. I also have only seen Dracula forward interpretations or adaptations. He's not a background character in any of the film journeys that we're going to talk about. I can honestly say that in this book, Dracula is not as a being fully present. His impact is extremely present. So I don't want to divert too far from the review. This is a great review I put together, and I think you're going to like it. But I did just want to touch on these films have been made from 1930 through current day. We're in 2025. And I have never seen the Dracula that I read in Bram Stoker's book. I've seen a myriad of interpretations. I've even seen Dracula on Scooby Doo. I love the Count on Sesame Street. Make no mistake, I love the Groovy Ghoulies. Believe Dracula was a part of their group, but I didn't take him as a character to fear. Even in the interpretations in the movies, it's gross and it's offensive that you could just walk up on me, hypnotize me, and bite me. Rude, but you don't really feel the terror of Dracula. I've never seen an interpretation where I felt like he was a terrorizing figure. But that book, though. But that book, though, it is not for the faint of heart. It is difficult. It is heartfelt, especially when you hear Mina's story and what is happening to Mina. But I digress. I'm going to let the chat squad in. I put together an amazing deep dive, and I'm just going to have a very short perspective at the end when we wrap this up. So stay tuned because I'd love to talk more about it.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we unpack classic stories, cultural phenomena, really get under the hood.
That's right.
And today, we're diving headfirst into something big, a real literary and cinematic battleground that's been going on for, what, over a century now?
Easily. We're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula.
The novel, yes. And how it stacks up against, well, the absolute mountain of American film adaptations.
It's this fascinating push and pull, isn't it? You've got the novel with its deep, unsettling power pulling one way.
And then Hollywood, often pulling in a very different direction, much more visual, you know?
Exactly. And that brings us to the core question for today, really. Do these films, I mean, they're iconic, right? Hugely popular. But do they actually capture that deep, chilling horror Stoker wove into the book?
Or do they kind of maybe accidentally turn the count into something else, like a spectacle?
Or a romantic hero, even a comedian sometimes, instead of that unseen terror that really defined him in the novel.
Yeah, that's a key distinction, the unseen terror.
And it makes you think, how does our experience of fear actually change? You know, when the monster is more like an invisible force, this creeping destruction you only see the effects of.
Versus the big, charismatic figure right there on the screen.
Precisely. It's a totally different feeling.
Okay, so that really sets the stage for our deep dive today. Our mission, for you listening, is to give you a richer understanding of Dracula, the novel, and his legacy.
We want to get past the capes and the fangs, the images we all know.
Right, to really appreciate the book's masterful dread. It's often quite understated, isn't it?
Yeah.
And its focus isn't just on Dracula himself, but on the destruction he leaves behind.
It's not just about what he is, but what he does. The damage. How that terror just slowly, agonizingly unfolds for the people caught in his path.
So we'll be digging into the original 1897 novel, obviously.
And we should definitely mention the Audible full cast edition. It's fantastic. Alan Cumming, Tim Curry, an incredible cast.
Oh yeah, that version really brings the text to life. It highlights that feeling of fragmented perspectives.
It does. And then, of course, we have to compare all that to the many, many film versions, for better or worse.
Definitely some for worse.
Fair enough. But it's crucial to get this first. Stoker's novel achieves its horror by keeping Dracula mostly off stage in the shadows.
Right. His motives, even his true form, are ambiguous for a long time.
And that's where the Audible version, as you said, really shines, because you're just hearing it, the fearful whispers, the frantic diary entries.
Your imagination has to do the heavy lifting, fill in the terrifying blanks.
Exactly. You feel the confusion, the fear, the grief of the characters. They're living inside the wreckage, often before they can even name the cause.
They don't understand what's happening until it's almost too late.
It's a horror that's felt, deeply felt, not just seen.
That's a great way to put it. It makes us, the audience, participate in creating the fear, makes it more personal. So let's unpack that. The novel's core horror, it's built on dread, right? Through distance and this delayed recognition of evil.
That's the key. Stoker's 1897 novel doesn't just throw Dracula at you.
No. He's not immediately the main antagonist you confront. He's barely even present for huge chunks of the story, especially at first.
His presence is more like a contamination, an influence. You feel it through its impact on others.
It's not jump scares, it's this slow burn. It just builds and builds into this unbearable dread, which honestly feels way more terrifying sometimes.
Absolutely. And Stoker's genius move here is the epistolary format, using diaries, letters, ship logs, newspaper clippings.
It drops us right into the characters' fragmented points of view. We piece it together with them.
There's no omniscient narrator telling us what's what. It's just this chorus of terrified, often confused voices, each one adding another piece of the puzzle.
And that narrative distance, weirdly, pulls you deeper into their individual terror.
Paradoxically, yes. It makes that delayed recognition so visceral. The book paints Dracula initially as this blood drinker whose presence is felt in illness, nightmares, and strange wounds.
Not through, flashy entrances.
Right. And this makes the horror feel just relentless, because the characters and you, the reader, are stuck grappling with doubt, with the unknown. Is it a disease? Madness? Something else?
They see the effects, the pale skin, the weakness, the nightmares, long before they can possibly identify the cause. The suspense is almost painful.
It really is. And you see this reflected so clearly in the main characters.
Like Jonathan Harker, his letters and diary from Transylvania.
Mm.
It's all about this creeping realization.
He doesn't instantly know Dracula's a monster. He's just this meticulous observer, almost like a scientist.
A victim of circumstance, yeah, trapped in just documenting the Count's weird habits, feeling imprisoned, the vampire bride.
Oh, the brides! Terrifying.
And there's no big reveal moment for Harker, is there? It's just this slow, agonizing slide as he realizes the truth and his sanity starts to fray. He's seeing the effects of his host.
Exactly. He's documenting the consequences, not fighting a known villain yet.
Then you have Mina Murray, later Mina Harker. Her story's fascinating, too.
Completely. Her connection to Dracula isn't some dramatic face-off. It's insidious, the bite, the influence.
And this turns her into the strategist, right? She's the one organizing the information, connecting the dots, not just a damsel in distress.
Not at all. She's fighting this internal battle, this psychic corruption. The terror for her is so psychological, the fear of becoming the montager.
Losing herself from the inside out.
And her work transcribing diaries, making deductions, it's absolutely crucial. Her intellect becomes a primary weapon against this unseen enemy.
And poor Lucy Westenra.
Yeah.
Her story's just heartbreaking.
Utterly tragic. Her slow decline from this vibrant young woman to, well, undeath.
It's this awful study in corrupted innocence. And her suitors, Arthur, Quincy, Dr. Seward, they're helpless. They only realize what's happening way too late.
And Lucy herself never really knows, does she? She just wastes away, consumed by this unseen evil she can't even name.
Her suffering is so prolonged. It really underscores the novel's horror. It's not quick shocks. It's this slow, agonizing destruction.
It's one of the most genuinely horrifying parts of the book, I think, that slow erosion of life.
And the collective struggle of Seward, Arthur, and Quincy really drives home this horror in the wake idea you mentioned.
Right. They're like detectives facing an unknown epidemic. Each brings something different. Seward, the scientific mind observing Renfield.
Van Helsing, guiding them with his mix of science and older knowledge.
Occult lore, yeah. And Arthur and Quincy bring grief, loyalty, resolve, physical strength, too.
But they're all reacting to the effects first. The weird blood loss, the nightmares, Renfield madness.
Long before they have a direct encounter with Dracula himself, their journey is about investigation, piecing together clues from the devastation he leaves behind.
Not about him striding in and announcing himself.
Precisely. It's about understanding the damage trail.
It's such a stark contrast when you think about the films, isn't it? That image of Dracula, swirling the cape, the grand entrance.
The booming voice, the immediate presence.
Compared to the novel, where the horror is hinted at, those strange scars, the shadows, the two little marks on the neck, that's the evidence.
The book makes you feel the dread of this invisible disease spreading through London, while the films often put the monster right there, spotlight on.
Inviting you to look at it?
Yeah. And the novel forces your imagination to build the monster, which makes it, I think, infinitely scarier.
Because what you imagine is always tailored to your own fears.
That's the power of it. The novel makes you feel the terror through the aftermath, the uncertainty. It uses your own mind against you.
It's definitely the bump in the night being scarier than seeing what made the noise.
Exactly that.
Okay, so let's unpack this further then. How do the films diverge so much from that foundation of subtle, destructive terror?
Well, when we talk about American film adaptations, it's almost a complete flip. They generally prioritize immediacy, spectacle.
Putting Dracula right out front.
Right, letting him walk in, deliver exposition, explain his whole deal.
And that cinematic need for direct action, for exposition. That's where you lose the ambiguity, right?
It really erodes it. Stoker's horror is like this creeping disease sneaking into homes and minds before anyone knows what it is.
Horror as aftermath.
Whereas films tend to shift it to horror as confrontation. Dracula arrives, often very imposing, explaining his curse, his thirst, his backstory.
It gives you clarity, sure, but it dispels that chilling mystery, that sense of the unknown.
Totally. Think about Bela Lugosi in the 1931 film. Iconic, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Defined the image for decades.
But he opens the film with that unsettling charm, that menace right on display. You see him, hear him, understand his power almost immediately.
There's no slow build where the audience is figuring it out alongside the characters. He's just there. Alluring, dangerous. You know who he is.
Because he's visible, central. And it's not just Lugosi. Think Christopher Lee in the Hammer film.
Visually striking, powerful, aristocratic. very present, almost seductive sometimes.
Definitely. A monster you're meant to look at. His actions are upfront, not hidden in letters.
And even Coppola's 1992 Bram Stoker's Dracula, I mean, it tries to use the diaries and letters visually.
It does make an effort with the structure, to its credit. But it still makes Dracula's backstory, his tragedy, the absolute center.
And invents that whole reincarnation love story with Mina.
Which is completely absent from the novel, and it totally changes the dynamic. The horror shifts from this insidious force to this tragic, passionate, very visible villain.
Even in trying to be faithful in some ways, it still prioritizes the spectacle of Dracula himself. He becomes the protagonist of his own story.
Right, and this need for a visible central Dracula isn't just in horror films, it pops up everywhere.
Even in comedies, like George Hamilton and Love at First Bite.
Exactly. Charming, theatrical, definitely the star, disco dancing Dracula.
Or Nicolas Cage in Renfield recently. Very over the top, very visible.
Again, Dracula's central, even in parody, as this toxic boss figure.
It seems like filmmakers just can't resist putting him front and center, making him explain himself, making him the focus.
It's just a fundamentally different way of approaching fear. The novel forces you into the unknown, makes you wrestle with things not fully explained, endure that creeping dread.
While the films often feel the need to give you the answers, the visuals, the direct fight.
Which is entertaining, don't get me wrong. But it can lessen that deep psychological dread that comes from ambiguity, from the unseen. You get the thrill, maybe, but lose the lasting chill.
You mentioned films that get closer, like Nosferatu.
Ah, yes. Murnau's 1922 German film, Max Schreck as Count Orlok. He's genuinely unsettling.
More like a plague rat than a charismatic count.
Exactly. He's pestilence, a creature of shadow. He doesn't explain anything. He just is. It taps into that primal fear of disease, the unknown.
It feels closer to the novel's dread in that sense.
It does. Among the U.S. films, Coppola's, for all its changes, probably makes the biggest effort to keep the ensemble feel, that slow unraveling, even with the romance plot.
It tried to respect the structure, at least partially.
Yeah, which is vital to the book's strength, that collective human effort against him. But even then, Gary Oldman's Dracula is such a powerful presence, he inevitably overshadows the subtle horror of his influence.
So these fundamental differences in approach, they naturally affect the characters too, right? How the adaptations reshape the people we meet in the book.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where you really see the impact on the type of horror being presented.
Because each major character gets altered, often simplified. And the focus shifts away from that collective battle against this insidious force.
Right. And why does that matter for the horror? Because when you simplify the characters, you simplify their suffering, their resilience, the nature of the threat itself.
You lose the nuances Stoker built up.
Exactly. The horror becomes less about this pervasive evil spreading through society and more about, well, the monster.
Okay, let's go character by character. Count Dracula himself. In the novel, he's initially a host, then a predator. But he's quite reserved, speaks sparingly.
His true nature is confirmed by what he does. The scars, the shadows, the bites. His power is almost in his absence, his influence. He's ancient, almost unknowable, a force.
Compared to the film Dracula, almost always front and center, charismatic, menacing.
Lugosi's stare, Lee's presence, Oldman's tragic romance, they make him visible, articulate, the focal point.
Which turns him from this force of nature into more of a character, a villain, maybe tragic, maybe seductive.
It creates iconic performances, no doubt, but it replaces that creeping dread with fascination or spectacle. It's a different feeling.
Okay, Jonathan Harker. In the novel, he's our initial eyes and ears, the solicitor trapped, meticulously recording his descent into terror.
His helplessness, his detailed journaling, that's our entry point into the horror.
But in films, often minimized, right? Becomes just the bland hero or the guy who needs rescuing.
Sometimes merged or even cut. It really weakens that initial sense of discovery, that vulnerability. You lose his psychological journey.
Yeah. The films often jump past that slow buildup of dread he experiences.
And Mina, in the book, she's incredible. The emotional core, super intelligent, resilient, the strategist piecing it all together.
Even when she's bitten, her fight is internal, a battle of wills against his influence. She's resisting fiercely.
But the films, especially Coppola's, often go for the romance angle,
making her the reincarnation of Dracula's lost love.
Which completely changes her struggle. It goes from psychological resistance against pure evil to tragic destiny. It undermines her agency, her intellect.
Makes the monster less purely monstrous, maybe. More of a tortured soul she's drawn to.
It reframes everything. And then Lucy. The novel portrays her decline as this slow, agonizing corruption, a symbol of innocence destroyed.
Her death is drawn out, devastating. You feel the suitor's helplessness.
But films. Almost always, she's reduced to the sensual victim. Her transformation is spectacle, gothic horror, sometimes overtly eroticized.
Her death is sped up, used for shock value.
Exactly. You lose that profound sense of waste, the slow corruption Stoker described. She becomes a plot point, a visually striking monster, not that tragic symbol. You get the effect, but lose the agonizing dread.
And the crew of Light Seward, Arthur, Quincy, in the novel they're a team. Diverse skills, shared grief, loyalty, a coalition.
Representing different facets of society uniting against this evil. Quincy's death, sacrificing himself with his Bowie knife, that's crucial. A collective effort, a shared victory, a real loss.
But films often trim them down.
Yeah.
Right? Especially Arthur and Quincy seem to disappear a lot.
They do. It simplifies the cast list, sure, but you lose that powerful theme of collective resistance, of different classes, nations, backgrounds uniting.
The fight becomes narrower, maybe focused on just Van Helsing and Harker or whoever's left.
It diminishes that sense of a grand struggle against a pervasive threat. Makes the victory feel different. Less like a communal effort.
And finally, Van Helsing. The book version is complex. Scientist, doctor, scholar, but also spiritual. Uses crucifixes, ancient lore.
He combines reason with this older, almost mystical knowledge. He's an intellectual detective, patiently guiding the others through their disbelief.
But film Van Helsing often becomes the archetypal vampire hunter.
Yeah. An action hero, almost. Peter Cushing, Hugh Jackman, Anthony Hopkins. They're often portrayed as much more direct combatants.
Warriors against evil.
Which, again, shifts the focus from investigation, from understanding this insidious unknown force, to direct confrontation. It changes the battle from wits and wills against the unseen to a physical fight against a known enemy.
It really changes the dynamic entirely. This brings up an important point, though. What about the characters whose stories get truly lost or twisted in these adaptations?
Ah, yes. And Renfield is probably the prime example of that, isn't he?
He really is. In the novel, he's such a complex, deeply tragic figure. This patient obsessed with consuming life. Flies, spiders.
It's grotesque, but it's this chilling foreshadowing of Dracula's own hunger, right?
Yeah.
A distorted human echo.
And he's prophetic in a way, aware of Dracula's influence, but totally powerless against it. Trapped in his own mind.
Absolutely. What's often lost is the sheer tragedy and symbolic weight of Renfield in the book. He's under Dr. Seward's care, and his obsession highlights the mental destruction Dracula causes. It's not just physical vampirism.
That's a really good point, the psychological damage.
And he has moments of clarity, doesn't he? Before his death, he understands the horror, tries to warn Seward. It's heartbreaking. It shows just how deep Dracula's corruption goes, twisting the human mind.
But on screen, he becomes something else. Dwight Fry in 1931 is iconic, that manic laugh.
Memorable, definitely captures the lunacy. But mostly as Dracula's cackling servant, you lose the internal struggle, the tragedy.
And Tom Waits in Coppola's film.
Oh, he's eerie, strange, captivating, brings this weird musicality to the madness, but still primarily a secondary grotesque figure. Fascinating, but the focus isn't on his deep suffering.
More on his eccentricity.
Right, and then you get the Renfield movie from 2023 with Nicholas Hoult.
Where Renfield is the protagonist, reimagined as, someone in a toxic work relationship.
Exactly, which is, funny and a fresh take. But it turns him into this satirical comedic hero, a massive departure from Stoker's tragic victim.
The satire works, but it completely changes his purpose from tragic warning to comedy.
So each film version grabs a piece of him, the madness, the prophecy, the servitude, the satire, but none quite capture that layered tragedy from the novel.
That internal struggle, the brief clarity, the way he mirrors Dracula's appetite.
That chilling parallel often gets lost in the spectacle. His fly-eating just becomes crazy behavior rather than something deeply symbolic of the Count's influence.
So, okay, taking all this into account, what does it mean for our understanding of Stoker's horror overall? It really seems to boil down to this key difference.
Yeah, the novels focus on horror as aftermath, that dread by distance.
Versus the film's preference for horror as confrontation, which gives us lore, spectacle, but maybe less of that deep, creeping dread.
I think that's exactly it. And the power of the unseen is just so much more profound in that sense. When Dracula is this force you don't fully see, his power feels limitless in your imagination.
Like with the Audible version we mentioned. Hearing those voices coming, Curry, you really live inside the character's fear and confusion.
You feel the damage they're experiencing, the silence between entries, the uncertainty, the lack of Dracula's direct presence. That's what builds the real terror.
You experience the impact of his destruction, psychically and physically, which could be way scarier than just seeing a monster.
Definitely. And film exposition often can't replicate that, can it? Film Draculas tend to arrive with their powers and history explained, maybe through monologues or visuals.
It shifts the horror from the unknown, the slowly unraveling mystery, to something immediately understandable. Often dramatic, sure.
But it takes away that haunting ambiguity, that uncertainty that makes the novel so chilling. We trade that deep discomfort for the immediate thrill.
It makes sense. The book forces you, the reader, to actively piece together the horror. You're engaged, your mind is working, building the dread.
It's an intellectual and emotional workout in fear. While the films often let you just watch it happen. Visually engaging, absolutely, but a different kind of experience.
It's like your analogy, the invisible spreading virus versus the charging beast. Stoker chose the virus.
He understood that the fear of the unknown, the insidious force that corrupts from within, is just more potent, more lasting.
Yeah, the terror isn't just what you see, it's what you don't see. What you only sense through the devastation. You feel it pervade everything.
And maybe that's why Dracula, the idea of Dracula, is so adaptable. He can be romantic, comedic, an action villain, because the core elements are so compelling.
Immortality, bloodlust, power.
Right. But the novel's specific horror, that dread from distance, focusing on the impact that remains unique and difficult for filmmakers to capture fully. It's tied so closely to the book's structure. It's slow burn.
It really speaks to the strengths of literature, doesn't it? A book can live in doubt, weave fragments together, let the reader project their own fears onto the unseen.
Whereas film, well, it needs to show things. It needs action, often a clear protagonist. Those needs inherently pull away from the novel's subtle, pervasive horror.
The moment you give Dracula a specific face, a voice, a clear motivation, he changes.
He becomes a character. And characters, however scary, can be understood, confronted, maybe even defeated in a way that an unseen, creeping dread just can't. It lingers differently.
So wrapping this up, where do we land after this deep dive? It feels clear that Stoker's novel, especially when you experience it through something like that full audio version, is just a masterclass in dread.
Achieved through distance, through focusing on the horrific damage Dracula causes. The characters stumble through confusion, grief, uncertainty, trying to name an enemy they barely comprehend.
The horror is the corruption, the destroyed lives, the twisted minds.
Whereas the American films, hugely entertaining and iconic as they are, almost always make Dracula the main event.
He's suave or monstrous or tragic or funny.
And the focus shifts, doesn't it? From the impact of evil on everyone else to the allure of evil itself. Or at least to Dracula as the central, visible figure.
The monster becomes less a force, more a character to analyze, maybe even sympathize with.
Exactly. And even Coppola's '92 film, which tries hard to honor the book's structure, still ends up leaning into romance and spectacle.
It just shows how hard it is for a visual medium to capture that specific, insidious horror of the original text.
It's a real testament to Stoker's genius, creating a monster whose greatest terror isn't when he's on screen, so to speak, but when he's absent, in the unseen, in the slow realization of his devastating influence.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe a bit provocative.
Go on.
What does it say about us, as an audience, that we seem to gravitate towards the visible monster? The one who commands the screen, maybe explains himself.
Rather than confronting that unseen, destructive force Stoker created.
Yeah. Maybe the truly terrifying monsters aren't the ones we can see jump out at us.
But the ones whose silent, subtle destruction we only recognize later, when the damage is done.
In hindsight. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other classic stories might we be simplifying? Focusing on the spectacle.
Instead of the shadow. And the real, lasting impact.
Definitely something to think about. And a great place to leave it until our next deep dive.
I hope you enjoyed the deep dive that I put together because I think it perfectly reflects where I land in my journey. I hope that the spoilers, because I mean, at this point, there cannot be spoilers here. But I said this before, and this is kind of why I love doing this. Growing up in the era of which visually most stories get interpreted, I'm so thankful to books and being able to disseminate with my mind and with the journey a writer takes me on, the richness of the characters that I would miss out on if I just watched them in a film adaptation. This is one of several books where I have seen the movies and then gone back and enjoyed the stories, and my jaw dropped because it's not subtle differences. It is such a wealth of character building, world building, circumstance that makes the situations unfold differently that you miss out on when you're not a reader. So, subscribe, grab a book, get into some pages, audio, written, whatever it is. Let's talk about this journey because I have some great stuff in store for you, and I hope that Dracula by Bram Stoker, even though it was written so long ago, has just as much impact in your library as it did in mine, because that is a top shelf experience. I'll see you at the next deep dive, and I hope you enjoy a great read.